Thanks so much, Craig. What a great episode of Conversations over Coffee. Joining me here in our Sydney studio is Craig Price, Head of Data Science and Artificial Intelligence, Centre of Excellence, SunCorp Group, who is going to chat to us all about applying advanced analytics, solutions and insights into the business. Welcome, Craig.
It's lovely to be here, Kate.
Great. As an analytics leader, what, in your view, Craig, are the greatest opportunities for organisations to leverage advanced analytics, data science and AI, both now and in the future?
Well, I think there are amazing opportunities. And I think if we, first of all, constrain ourselves to the current horizon, I can think of amazing opportunities around customer experience, also in operational efficiency. And then finally, one that's emerging recently is around improving the risk optimization of an enterprise. And so just digging into the first one for a little minute, many people in the audience are going to be very aware of the fact that organisations are increasingly trying to get customers to use their digital channels, in ever greater, cases and circumstances, and that takes load off the contact centres and also off stores, and that's a good thing in many cases, and also corresponds to, I think, post-COVID in particular. The fact that a lot of customers across different age groups now, including some of the older age groups, are more and more comfortable with interacting digitally with financial service organisations or other retail organisations. And so I guess we're seeing the rise of intelligent virtual assistants, or IVAs. And you can think of IVAs, I guess, as a smart chatbot. And increasingly we're seeing them with voice interfaces, a little bit like Siri or Alexa. And some organisations are even trialling virtual AI human type interfaces as well. So I'm not sure where it's all going to land in terms of which one of these is going to be really taken up and what kind of utilisation people are going to, but they're great innovations. But what I do think the killer feature, I guess, in customer experience is a couple of things. That the underlying engine and the intelligence driven by data and analytics is, first of all, going to recognise a customer when they turn up. To interact with an organisation, and it will remember previous conversations or previous interactions. And I think that what happens then is that it's a great customer experience because you don't have to retell your story, or you don't have to re-key in what you've already done many times before. So I think we'll see that in the underlying engine and the underlying intelligence. But the other one is very much around understanding and predicting, what is the customer trying to do in the moment, as well as having a bit of a sense as to what they might be trying to do in the medium term, around what are their aspirations. In a financial services context that I'm familiar with, that's really around, what are they trying to do from a financial wellbeing point of view in the medium term. And I guess then that, the underlying engines that are actually sort of, kind of predicting these type of things, if it has that context, then you are able to actually orchestrate a really good digital experience. And so a couple of examples of what that might look like. Simple ones are that if I'm just trying to change an address or do something kind of simple on my policy, my product or service, then essentially these assistants can actually just help you navigate through and get it done without you having to actually go through and find, a part of the website or click through a number of screens.
I've experienced it myself. Sometimes it's not the most straightforward process.
Correct. So sometimes you have to do many clicks, or it might be hidden deeply away. So that's kind of a simple kind of transactional one. But I guess that then a more kind of complex one would be, or a more sophisticated example would actually be if a customer is kind of a high risk, of lapsing a particular product. Then essentially for us to be aware of that, and again for that kind of personalised experience to be appropriately incentivising them, and whether that's actually just giving them a message, providing a nudge, or a real offer, then those kind of things are going to be more and more important going forwards. So I think that the good thing is that kind of underlying kind of next best action or next best conversation engine is very much, I think, going to have its time, in the sun over the next few years. And it's not just about digital channels, because I think that same intelligence, should be actually ubiquitous across all of the organisation's channels. And that's where I really am seeing a kind of an uptick in interest around this kind of multi-channel customer orchestration, customer experience orchestration, and that's fundamentally driven by data and analytics. And so the idea that no matter where you're interacting with an organisation, whether it's on the contact centre, whether it's into a store or if it's actually through the digital channels, then you're going to get a consistent experience. Yeah. You're going to get experience that kind of knows where you've been and what you're up to at the moment. And it's going to actually reduce frustration and also just result in a lot more high value interactions with the customers.
So that'll have a big impact for customers.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It is.
Yeah,
so it's kind of make it simple and kind of recognise me for my relationship with the organisation.
Yeah. I think it really tells as a customer, as you say, if you don't have to re-input, just as a very basic starting point. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that many people would think that customer experience is all around flogging product, but we really are seeing that make it easy.
Yeah, know me as a customer. Yeah,
absolutely.
That's great. Craig, building a data and analytics capability that supports growth, drives better customer outcomes, and reduces cost is a focus, obviously, of many organisations right now. From your experience, what are the cornerstones required to make this all happen?
Yeah, look, I think the cornerstones pretty much follow the kind of those simple categories, of people and process, technology and culture. So I'd just like to unpack, each of those just very briefly.
Please.
I think in people, the one thing that I'd say as kind of a leader with a little bit of experience is that get the best people you can. And that might sound, kind of trite or obvious, but I think that sometimes budgets or even just time pressures around trying to get people on board kind of constrain. And I think that in terms of trying to get around that, I do have a kind of a philosophy that kind of buys into the so-called 10x developer theory. And if you haven't heard of that, what it comes down to is that the idea that the best people within a technical profession are some multiple times more productive in terms of the outcomes that they generate compared to an average practitioner. So it really is worth your while to actually try and get those type of people for key roles. Obviously, you can't do that for every role across the organisation. And what are actually, even one thing that you should be thinking about is if you've got a certain fixed budget, maybe less is more. A smaller team of higher kind of capability individuals can actually get you better outcomes for the same results. And I've kind of seen that over time. In terms of how to do that, there's kind of many kind of things to be thinking about, but one that I've really seen beneficial is actually practical testing.
Okay.
And many people probably do have that as part of their recruiting process, but there's nothing like obviously seeing somebody kind of pull apart a real problem and a real business problem, not just a data problem.
In terms of their approaches. And
yes, that's right. Because in an interview you can say all the right things, but when it comes to actually solving a problem from first principles. And that's kind of really where we're focusing at, because a lot of people that we see, especially in our senior kind of principal data scientists, they've got PhDs, they've got fantastic skills, but really it's the application of those skills is what separates, the kind of the really great, from the good. And we kind of see this, and one of the things that we do to actually try and make this simple for ourselves and for the individuals is actually use the Kaggle platform. And I'm not sure if you know about Kaggle. It's kind of I think it's called like the Olympics, for data scientists.
Yes.
So on there's a number of business problems with data ready to go, and you can even score yourself with models. And so we actually just point them to a particular link on the Kaggle platform and say, let's talk in about a week's time and see what you've done with that. So it's been really cool. I think most people would know that it's not all about technical proficiency, and it is around getting some of the other skill sets. You have to have those represented in your team. So you can have the best technical teams, but if they can't communicate and if they can't sort of influence business stakeholders, then it's going to fail.
Multifaceted, the business language,
correct,
and the technicalities as well.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. So, what that actually then means is, where are these unicorns? Okay,
yes.
So where have you got sort of like people that are like, the top of their technical proficiency?
Like it's an age-old question now.
That's right. And a simple response, I guess, that we've found effective is, by all means, if you stumble across a unicorn, grab them. But if not, then you've got a team, and I guess that you can actually get, the mix of skills across your team.
Yeah.
And we've seen that. We've had sort of senior leaders, in my teams that span from, very technical PhDs right through to really good business analytics professionals, but with fantastic consulting skills. And we've seen those skill sets come together very well in a leadership team. And basically that sort of, lifts the kind of the game of the entire team as we do that. So I guess that some of the other cornerstones are pretty much thinking about process and technology. I'll lump those in together. I do see really great value in having a data science platform. In terms of process and technology, I think it's really interesting because I think one of those key things that you need from a great data analytics team is the ability to prototype rapidly.
Yes.
It's all about trying to find some value in what you're creating rather than just a cool solution. So having a platform and a set of processes that actually allow for that rapid prototyping, but then importantly to be able to take that, if it's valuable, to take that to a production asset, without having to throw it all away and have it re-engineered from scratch. And that's where we've found having a data science platform, the technology that actually allows for that to happen in both modes has been super beneficial for our team. I think we found that we accelerated when we actually jettisoned the idea of actually trying to roll our own, to actually build our own platform. We realised that we didn't really have an army of engineers and we weren't going to get there. So utilising one of the third-party vendors, to actually utilise their workbench, essentially, to allow our data scientists to get the high capacity compute that they need, and then to collaborate, I guess, in what they develop has been really, really beneficial. And I guess that now from our organisation is recently decentralised, and so that people and process things, we do see that kind of ecosystem, last year, correct. And we do see that the platform and actually having a central place for data scientists to collaborate, and also to share, kind of what they're doing is kind of a little bit of what we're seeing is going to be the glue, in our community of practice. So I think that's really great. And then finally, culture. And I think everyone sort of talks about culture, but what does culture mean, from a data science team? And there's many things, but I'm just going to pull out two for today's chat. And the first one is very much around a business focus. Okay. So I'll always sort of come back to that, before getting to the technical culture. But this idea that for data science and AI, to be most effective, I don't believe in actually coming to the problem, with no context. So it very much is, I encourage all of my teams to have a really deep understanding of the business process or the kind of the operational process that they're trying to fix or trying to optimize, somehow. So I think that if they have that, then they're able to actually go back and sort of, devise a solution, collaborating with the business, that actually is more likely to get to a positive outcome. And in fact, we've seen examples, I guess, when people haven't got that context, that they can potentially go off on a tangent or not bring the right data to the problem, or somehow not be aligned with what the business stakeholder is trying to do. So that kind of alignment and focus, on being great technically, but honestly, you've got to get down and understand, your business problems. And I think the second one is kind of related, and it's very much being value focused. I think all of us from technical background, we love new technology, new methods, and cool, shiny new toys to play with. But what it comes down to, I think, is the right kind of technical solution that is going to actually demonstrate the value best. And I remember one of our well-regarded PhDs in the team was posed with a problem, and in his mind, even though he could have actually utilised a really cool deep learning solution, he was kind of relentlessly focused, even though it wasn't as sexy, to actually just do another approach that he knew could actually deliver value faster and cheaper for the end client. And I thought that was a really great kind of focus for him to actually have. We did have to encourage him to actually do a little bit of the cool stuff just to show, because the stakeholder was expecting a little bit of razzle dazzle, and he was great at that. But it was just an interesting kind of focus around being also quite pragmatic and practical. That's brilliant. And I think that's been really good.
But to marry the two as well is it's really great. Yeah. Craig, there's a lot of interest in how best to organise a business data and analytics capability. Obviously, you've alluded to the fact that you now have a decentralised operating model, but what in your experiences have been the pros and cons around those two different decentralised and centralised operating models? So you're able to share a bit more on that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I was just talking with another colleague just late last week, who's going through, or seeing some of his clients actually going the opposite direction. Right. And I think that comes to that no one model is perfect. I think many people would sort of understand that. But so it absolutely depends on the circumstances and the maturity of your organisation. So I think our story is back in 2013. We're a financial services organisation across insurance and bank. But our then CEO, like many others at the time, kind of recognised that data was an enterprise asset that was kind of being underutilised.
Yeah.
And so where we were at that time is that we actually had business unit teams where there was fragmented capability.
Right.
We did not have, a kind of a central data lake. And so we're actually not getting the most, out of our information. So he was basically the stimulus to actually creating the first centralised chief data office. And so the business analytics teams were actually brought in, and this chief data office eventually sat under technology. And so we had business analytics people as well as data scientists now sitting side by side with the traditional IT people. So these are the data engineers, and the architects and the platform engineers. And what we actually saw come out of that was, because you now had scale and there was a focus, we saw an uplift in technical capability. We also saw an uplift in the development disciplines, I guess, and the governance of all the assets that were being generated. So that was a really positive outcome. And we also saw greater cohesion. Sometimes many organisations, there's a little bit of business analytics teams and IT, it's kind of a little bit, kind of misaligned.
Yes.
So that was actually a really positive thing. So there was kind of a sharing of context. So the IT professionals actually saw more of the business perspective. The business perspective saw more of the, the struggles that IT professionals have in managing data platforms and all of the woes that go with that. So that was really beneficial. And I guess that, rolling forward 6 years on from that brings us to 2020. And we had been reaping the benefits, but I guess the focus, of the organisation had changed. And now it was very much trying to focus on business unit empowerment and agile decision making, at that front end. And so that was the time, taken to actually let's partially decentralise, that analytics community, which included the BI professionals, so Tableau and Cognos developers, as well as some of the data scientists into the business units. So that was that's been really good, and it's early days. But really, what we've seen already is we haven't sort of lost, the rigour and the capability. So we've got these community of practices that are actually still meeting to share, best practice. But we do see actually some uptake from the business units, in terms of some of the transformational ideas. And so we're actually seeing, that they're actually kind of, taking on the teams that are embedded in their world. And we're seeing actually transformation sort of, kind of heating up. Even though they're the same ideas that we've been talking about for certain years, obviously having teams, that are technical, close to the business decision makers has actually had a benefit in that kind of alignment.
That's great. Sounds like it's all really positive.
Yeah, it is. It is. And again, I guess, there's always trade-offs, but I guess, for where our organisation is, that's kind of where we're going.
Yeah, fantastic. In your experience, Craig, what are the key ingredients in developing, setting and articulating a vision for advanced analytics, data science and AI? How can you fully engage the business? I know a lot of organisations are struggling with this, but how can you fully engage the business?
Well, I think similar to what we were talking about before around having that culture of being business first, I think you have to ground, all of your technical vision in what your organisation's strategy is. So being very aware of what the organisation's outcomes, strategic outcomes, what are they investing in from a transformation point of view is kind of, that's kind of step one from my perspective. Because without that, there's so many ways that you can actually develop a data and analytics organisation. So you really need to be aware of what over the next 1 to 3 years is going to actually make all of the business, achieve their goals faster. And I think that with that context in mind, then you can actually think about what is, best practice.
Yes.
And from my perspective, a lot of the data and analytics, data science and AI kind of capabilities, the external advice and, best practice out there are there's many things that are kind of quite aligned and non-controversial. So the idea of having rapid prototyping, the idea of being able to actually seamlessly move, ideas into production.
Yeah.
ML ops processes and technologies, are very much, where everybody's focused on developing.
And having those environments, as you say, that you can rapidly move into that.
Correct. Yeah. And so going along with that, then access, to the breadth of information, both internal and external. So there's all of these things. I think that the end state really is quite clear. I think it's really just the pathway that you take to get there. So after you've actually got that kind of vision of what great looks like, and there's so many resources out there that kind of will paint that picture. The real trick, I think, is trying to work through how do you make meaningful progress towards that end state. So you really need to sort of prioritize, all of the things that you could be investing, your people's time or, investment budget into. And again, the pathway that you take, to that beautiful future really has to be aligned on what's going to sort of generate the best business outcomes along, especially because many teams need to actually be able to show that value up front to make sure that, our business stakeholders don't actually lose, kind of faith, in the power of, analytics, because, it is easy to get lost.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There's lots of things that can catch your attention, but as you say, the prioritization, the commitment to the vision, the ultimate goal. It's really impressive stuff.
Yeah, great.
Greg, how can you see the role of prototypes and pilots in growing the use of data-driven insights across all areas of the business?
Yeah, I think I'm a big fan, and I think that showcasing what the art of the possible is just such an important thing. Yeah. And I kind of think back a couple of years ago, we had an internal hackathon, which was great. We've got to have a few of those kind of running from time to time. And there's such a good opportunity for business and technology teams to come together, to do the kind of rapid development of ideas. But I would never forget that one of the judges was a senior business stakeholder. Okay. And we were lucky enough to actually win that particular hackathon. But I remember the comment was really cool, which was, I'd heard about, the promise, of data science and AI, but it's only now that I've actually seen your prototype, that I've seen it kind of, how it can actually help my business, that now I can actually see
where the value lies.
Yeah. So that was great. And again, it was just a matter of, seeing is believing. And it was nice to say that, that prototype is now actually in production, and it's basically a customer experience, kind of play. Brilliant. So apart from those kind of hackathon options, the good thing about agile processes, many people will actually be developing agile. Whole idea about agile is, each iteration, or as soon as you can, to actually sort of show a little bit of what you're doing. So it's kind of built into a way that technology projects are run these days anyway. But make the most, I guess, of actually showing something tangible, if you can. And finally, one of the things that I've seen is collaboration, I guess, with digital labs or innovation teams within an organisation has been really beneficial, certainly from our team's point of view, because there's really a meeting of the minds, I guess. Digital innovation teams are really trying to show better customer experiences and what's coming next. Yeah. And they need, data and analytics teams, to line up and empower what they're doing. So we've actually seen some great collaborations and some really good outcomes coming out of that.
It's fantastic, Craig. Thank you so much. You've taken us through a whole host of areas today, and really appreciate it. Great. Thank you so much.
No problem. It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you. What a great session. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can check out our additional content surrounding the topics we've covered today over at the Business of Data, our content platform.